I'd love to get right into today's topic and introduce our guest. The topic, product sense. And I feel like this has been particularly a hot topic over these last couple of years. A lot of people talking about product sense. I remember when I first started seeing people talk about product sense, I was really into it, but also in my mind, I'm like, what does it really mean? What do they mean when they say product sense? So we're going to talk more about that today. And with me to dig in on this, I have Praful Chavda, CEO of Chisel. We've had Praful with us before. We actually did a whole write-up on Chisel. We did a behind the product series in our newsletter. So it might be a familiar face to you, but Praful, it's great to have you here with us.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be with you.
Yeah. So for those that maybe they didn't join us the first time when I had you on for one of these sessions, would you mind just giving the quick sort of elevator pitch background on who you are and what you're all about?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Mike. I've been a product management leader for over 23 years now. A large part of my career was at Microsoft. My last job was there as head of product in Office 365. Before that, I built the Windows Phone App Store. Before that, I built the high definition playback for Xbox. And after that, I switched over to the world of startups. I've been a part of 3 startups now. At the first startup, it was a machine learning AI company where I was VP of product. After that, I started my own company in natural language processing and AI, and I sold it. And then immediately after that, I founded Chisel, which is a product management tool. And yeah, I'm based here in sunny California, Silicon Valley.
Love it. I love it. And it's awesome. That background's interesting because, we're going to talk about product sense. You have the context as a product leader, working at big organizations. You have that context as an entrepreneur, working in a nimble organization too. So maybe let's just start with defining what product sense is and why is it important for product people to really have a good understanding of what product sense is all about.
Yeah, I think very simply put, product sense is about the ability to understand your customers or users' needs and then building successful products that can satisfy those needs. It's as simple as that. And as you can imagine, the bread and butter for a product management job is to be able to create awesome products that users fall in love with. And so it's like, at the heart of a product management job and super necessary for a product management to be actually successful in their career.
When you think about it, are there specific sort of elements that make up product sense or just, because I love that succinct definition. Maybe we could peel back the layer behind that. Like what other kind of elements would you say make up product sense?
Yeah, I think, obviously, a lot of people define it differently. I think in my mind, I like to kind of like divide this in like 4 parts, right? The number one is the ability to actually understand the customer and the user needs, right? Which is based on customer feedbacks, qualitative, quantitative, those kind of things. The second element is being able to understand the domain or the market that you are working in, right? In terms of the lay of the land, in terms of competition, in terms of barriers, those kind of things. Then the third element is having really crisp or really deep analytical problem solving skills, right? Because when a product manager is presented with a lot of data like this, they need to have really good analytical problem solving skills to kind of get to the bottom of what matters and what doesn't matter, right? And the last but not least is basically their ability on the creative side, right? Their creative thinking, the ability to actually think outside box. If the regular solutions, normal solutions don't work, what could the product manager do to meet conflicting requirements and still have a very delightful experience? So I think those 4, in my mind, are really the main elements of product sense. Some people like to, combine customer feedback and domain, saying, that's the know-how part. And some people like to kind of, put even analytical problem solving as a part of just problem solving, creative thinking. But I like to kind of, separate out these 4 elements.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful to help us think through it. Do you have a perspective? Are they all equal? Or do any have more weight than others? Just your personal opinion on. I'm sure people might have different takes on that, but
in terms of absolute priority, I don't think there is something absolutely which is like more important than the other things. What I have seen is depending on the context, depending on the product that you are building, depending on the market situation, one thing may end up being more important than other, right? But I mean, I do have a favorite. Like, when when I personally think about this, ability to understand the customer needs and customer behaviors is, in my mind, very, very critical, right? Because that can actually tell you or give you signals about a lot of other elements as well.
No, that I appreciate you sharing that. And like, I'm sure, again, we might all have our personal favorite, but yeah, it helps understand more about you as a product leader. And I guess to that point, now in your role at Chisel, you're a product leader, but you're leading the company. You're a company leader. You're the CEO. Do you feel like your understanding of product sense has influenced the way you lead at Chisel? I'm just curious about that.
Oh, absolutely, right. And very interestingly, see, first and foremost is something that applies to every company, and that obviously applies to Chisel, right? We want to build products that delight our customers and meet their needs and help them become super successful. Towards that, obviously, we are very focused on understanding customer needs, hearing their feedback, and based on that, being laser focused in terms of what features we build in our roadmap. And that is true for any other company. But there is a second element that is very unique to Chisel. It is because we are building a platform for product managers, right? And therefore, there is an opportunity in the platform itself to influence how product managers think about product sense, right? It's our duty as a part of the platform itself to help them, give them tools which they can use to further refine their own product sense. So as an example, in Chisel, we have a lot of feedback collection tools, right? We allow you to do surveys for customers. We allow you to actually create customer portals where customer can directly give feedback. We integrate with other feedback tools to develop synthesis based on AI. And then we help you kind of create PRDs, etc., which are all AI based, right? And so these tools of feedback collection help you actually get closer to the customer. So we are actually instrumenting the platform itself for other product managers to actually develop a great sense of product, great product sense, and then make it a part of their day-to-day job in terms of when they are trying to meet their customer needs.
Yeah, it's unique when you're building. Also, when you're building products for product people, I feel like the stakes are raised, right? Like the
That's right.
expectations are high. So, yeah, building that into the product, I'm sure it wins you points with product managers too, as they're noticing those types of things. So that's great. I'm curious. What about common misconceptions? When people are talking about product sense, you're helping us understand what it is. Are there sort of common misconceptions that people have about product sense? Maybe do people think it's one way, but that's actually not what product sense is all about? I'm just curious if you've heard things where maybe it gave you pause.
Yeah, I think, as you said, my product sense has been a hot topic over the last couple of years, right? And so a lot of people have opinions on what it is and it isn't, right? And obviously, their opinions are formed based on their own experiences. The interesting thing is that I think when I think about it, there are some things that resonate with me and there are some things that don't, right? And whatever doesn't resonate, it kind of feels like a misconception, right? So there are three items I think that kind of jump to me when I think about like misconceptions. One is I've heard a lot of people say that product sense is something that you are born with. You can't really develop that skills. And I actually disagree with that because I think just like any other product management skill, there are ways you can train yourself to actually develop that, right? Like you can get better at listening to customers. You can get better at using tools to listen to the customers, right? You can get better at how to analyze your domain and the market. You can develop analytical skills and tool set that help you analyze the situation better. And you can do a bunch of creative classes to actually nurture your out of box thinking. So I kind of think that's a misnomer that you're born with it and you cannot kind of develop that. The second thing that I've heard people say is that it's all about creative thinking. It's really not. There are many situations where you don't need to really think outside the box or super creatively because the data is already telling you a story. if you have great skills to kind of analyze the data and do, root cause analysis, do some funnel analysis to see what percentage of your customers get affected by what problem in a particular sequence, right? It gives you a lot of insights to actually create the right solution for that. So like over indexing or over emphasizing creativity at the expense of analytical problem solving skills is another thing that I've noticed. And the last part is, there is some confusion about the number of years of experience you have in a particular field versus your understanding of the domain, right? I don't think one needs to have 15 years of experience in a domain to be able to build great product sense and great products for that domain. However, they do need to have really deep understanding of the domain, and that understanding can be developed in a shorter time. You don't need to be in a field for 15 years, right? You can be in a field for a year, but work really hard to understand the lay of the land, to understand the data, and then make some synthesis around that. And so I think those are the top things that I kind of consider as misconceptions about product sense.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully everybody watching makes you feel a little bit better, right? Because a lot of those misconceptions, that it might be things that have made us feel down. Like, oh, gosh, I don't have this domain experience, or I wasn't born with this. It's like some people are just born with it, but it makes it sound like you could work to develop and hone product sense, which I think helps level the playing field. And actually kind of leads me to my next question, which is, if you can hone your product sense that you've developed, what is the best way to do that? Because I'm sure a lot of people that are watching here, they want to get a better, they want to hone their craft. They want better product sense that they could develop for themselves and their team. So maybe it's a two-part question. It's like, how do you do this for yourself? And also for on teams, whether we're leading those teams or not, how do we help the rest of the people that we're working with hone their product sense as well?
Yeah, I think, both in a way. See, a product manager has a lot of influence on the rest of the team, right? And so the answer to, what they can do to get better, and also what they can do to make their team better, are somewhat kind of similar, right? Because whatever they are doing for themselves, they can also encourage and evangelize within their own teams. And I think that, like, if you think about the elements, 4 elements that I mentioned earlier, that how I think about product sense, right? The best way to get yourself and your team ready is, or trained, is actually, take each of them and go deeper. Take each of them and train yourself. So as an example, there are really good training programs or books available on how you can get really good at listening to your customer feedback, right? How you can use qualitative tools to get the feedback, like live person interviews, etc., usability studies, etc., or how you can actually get quantitative feedback, whether it is via feedback tools like Amplitude or Pendo, or whether it is via survey tools, etc. So getting yourself trained on that element, there are lots of tools available outside. Similarly, developing this muscle of how do you systematically analyze the market, right? Who are the legacy players in the market? Who are the incumbents or the leaders in the market, right? Are you a challenger in the market? What unique strengths these people have? And so understanding that market also and getting yourself trained, there is a lot a product manager can do to actually get better at that, right? Then comes the part about, problem solving skills. And I know that, a lot of, again, there is a lot of really good literature out there, which helps team members develop analytical problem solving skills, right? Like how do you, common tools like, funnel analysis, how do you do root cause analysis, etc. And once a product manager is familiar with those tools, given a whole bunch of data, it becomes really obvious to them which tools can be applied where to actually successfully analyze something, right? And finally, the toughest part is creativity, right? Like a lot of people would challenge that, either you are creative or you're not creative. And, to some extent, it could be true that some people are born gifted. Like, I mean, they just have a right brain, which is amazingly more functional, right, than the rest of us. And their creativity is off the charts. But I think there are, again, many training programs available which actually help you think outside the box. It developed that muscle, which is about, hey, don't just go in a conventional route. Here are some of the ways you can actually break the convention. Here are some of the ways you can explore some paths which are not typical. And once you learn about those patterns, then you can practice and apply those patterns in any given kind of domain.
That's great. I appreciate that. We have an audience question coming in, and keep the audience questions coming in. We have time for at least a good couple audience questions here. And I'm just going to read this out. So, yeah, I'm going to read this out and you could let me know what you think, Praful. Question is, I totally agree on the number of years in a specific domain. However, the market seems to disagree with that sentiment. Feel if you're curious and you dive into the domain as a good product person and correlate qualitative and quantitative data to solve customer problems, do you have tips for those that are in the market, or do you have tips for those that are in the market address the domain bias? So this person agrees, but is worried maybe that that some people do have that domain bias. I guess what's your take on that?
Well, I think that there are like there are two aspects to this. Is right. Many people encounter this kind of situations in an interview, right? Where they are giving interview for a particular role as a product manager, and they can clearly see that the interviewer is indexing hard on kind of like number of years of experience, right? And if you have an opportunity like that, and if you are prepared, right, you can actually demonstrate that no, I do have domain, even though I don't have 15 years of experience, I do actually understand this domain really well. And even in outside of interview situations, let's say in your day-to-day job, etc., right? You took a new job, and often product managers find it difficult to have their voice heard because there are other people in the room who have more experience, and they will kind of like have a louder voice. Once again, the only way to win that battle is to actually demonstrate, right? You show insights that you understand the market and the domain very well. You are prepared with data. You are prepared with insights, and that helps you kind of win over the other people. But this gets increasingly difficult if you don't even get a shot, right? So, for instance, if somebody is hiring for a position, you send your resume, you only have 1 year experience in that domain, and that person is screening resumes based on, I need at least 5 years of experience in, for example, payment space, and you don't have 5 years. At that point, you may not even get a chance to kind of like, have your voice heard. But once again, I think in these kind of situations, if you try to demonstrate that knowledge, like I've heard many people will send a case study, right? They would prepare a case study and send it along with their application, and the hiring manager will be able to read that and say, you know what, this person actually has deep insights in this space. So I think the idea really is to seek and latch on to opportunity which allows you to demonstrate. Nothing speaks louder than actual evidence, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really good advice. I appreciate that. And thank you for the audience question out there too. One thing that was on my mind is, when we're talking about product sense, a lot of it seems like soft skills kind of things, which I'm a big fan of. But I know that, I could do an entire industry interview, next time on making data-driven decisions. Actually, I think I've done that session multiple times. How do you balance out the kind of using your intuition, which is a part of product sense, versus, making data-driven decisions? And I guess that could vary by stage, so maybe like in the earliest stages of product development, how do you make that balance?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And you hit the nail on the head, Mike, here. I think it really depends on what stage you are with your product development, right? In very early stage products or early stage companies, there is not really much data available about the usage of your own products or the feedback from customers after using your own products. So at that point, you have limited data, and your judgment, your intuition, and your understanding of the customer needs in the market is what's going to drive a lot of these decisions, right? And in those situations, you would try to kind of find adjacent data, right? Is there any data from competing products that I can find? Is there any data from the overall market that I can find? Is there any data that I can glimpse into from my past experience in a similar domain? So I think those are the kind of things that come to kind of your rescue, right? But towards the later stage of the product, where you've already shipped 1 or 2 versions, you have a ton of customer feedback. At that point, there is a lot of data to make a decision. And the risk at that point is reverse, right? Which is one can just become completely biased by the incoming data, and they forget their own vision, or they forget their own judgment or intuition, right? And this kind of leads to this situation of, hey, I'm going to give a faster horse to the customer because the customer is asking for a faster horse. And if you were innovating on producing a steam engine, you can't do that at that point, right? And so I think great product managers are aware of these kind of bias, right? Not to get too far drawn into any one direction, and be aware of what stage they are and how much they can count on data versus judgment and intuition.
Yeah, you started to touch up on something. You mentioned risk, and that was another one of my questions: is how does product sense affect risk management and product development? And because I feel like a big part of our job, we're trying to de-risk. Everything we do, we're trying to de-risk
Yeah.
our actions, whether it's getting more customer feedback, iterating time after time. What's your take on product sense and risk?
Well, I think, the biggest risk really is on time. Because imagine this, right? See, when an organization builds a product and spends a lot of resources, a lot of human capital as well as money for 1.5 year, they launch the product. If the product doesn't do well, yes, we lost a lot of money, right, behind that product development. But most importantly, you lose a lot of valuable time. That time doesn't come back. Your competition doesn't stop. They keep making more progress. And relatively speaking, your position in the market gets weaker and weaker, and that has spin balls into other effects, like your team morale is going to reduce, right? The customers who are existing might start churning or have lower confidence on the product, etc. So it has a lot of negative kind of spiral effect, right? And so I think the biggest risk in my mind, is not to optimize for the money or the resources you're spending, to be hyper aware the value of time, right? And that's I think what we need to manage really well. We need to understand that time is of essence here. We need to make fast progress in the market because competition is not standing still.
Yeah. That's great. No, I appreciate that. I'm looking at the clock, and this time's kind of flown by. We're getting towards the end of our conversation. Maybe what I'm going to do, I do want to ask you one last question, and then a bonus. I'll call it a lightning round question, where it's more of a quick answer. But as we're looking ahead at what's the next, say, several years, in product sense, like, how do you see the role of product sense evolving? And I especially am thinking about like how things just in general in tech have evolved the last couple of years. AI has been a big part of that evolution. I don't know if AI has anything to do with products. I'm just, all the tech advancements you see coming. How do you feel product sense deals with some of those advancements?
Yeah, these advancements are going to be amazing, to be honest, for product managers in particular, right? See, because we talked about, being able to analyze customer data. Many product managers are out there who are like, yes, I have 50,000 feedback tickets from my customers, but I just have no way to manually go through this and get any sense out of this, right? But then, tools like Chisel helps you do this, right? You have 50,000 ideas. We can synthesize those ideas and automatically classify within seconds. And then you take one bucket of ideas and you can actually create a PRD out of that within, once again, seconds, right? So what's going to happen is these kind of tools, right, are going to help product managers deal with something that they were never able to do before manually, right? So that automatically makes it easier to have better insight into customer needs. It makes it easy to have better analysis of the data because the tools are helping you do the analysis. And even on the creative front, given generative AI, there are a lot of tools which can create 5 different versions of a design for you within seconds. And at that point, you are not thinking outside the box. The tool is thinking outside the box for you, giving you 5 options to choose from, and it becomes a great help to PMs. So I think it's going to be really, I look forward to these tools maturing, where product managers can really then focus their time on critical judgment and decision making versus just data collation.
Yeah. Praful, if there is one big takeaway that you hope people get from this session, because oftentimes, it's this session, like, we've learned a lot. There's a lot of, I'm sure somebody's taking notes. They've got a ton of notes in front of them, but sometimes it's that last thing we hear that really stands out. So if there's one big takeaway you hope people get from this session, what would you want that to be?
Well, I think as you saw, right, there are things which are quite in the opposite direction. Analytical skills are very different than creative skills, right? Understanding customer is quite different than understanding competition and the market. So I think the biggest thing that a product manager needs to do is always have an objective synthesis of the situation, right? Get your understand your customer really well. Don't let your prejudice or bias play into that. Just be objective and analyze these four dimensions to see what really makes sense for your customers, and go build that.
I love that. That's a great way to end. So, Praful, I just want to thank you once again for being a part of this session with us. And Praful, if there are ways that people could keep tabs on you and your work and what you're up to, what would be the best way to do that? Whether it be LinkedIn, the Chisel website, which, by the way, has a ton of great resources. I can attest to that as a product person. What's that best way for people to keep tabs on what you're doing?
Yeah, I think following like LinkedIn and connecting me with LinkedIn is really the best way to kind of engage with me.
Great. What I'm going to do is when I follow up with everybody, I'm going to include your LinkedIn and, of course, a link to the Chisel website. Because, like I said, I think there's great resources on there for everybody. So thank you again, Praful. And thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your day to be with us for this industry interview. We have several other coming up. Actually, you could go to go to my.productcollective.com, our member hub, and you could see the sessions, every session that's coming right up. So you could check it out there. So with all that, I hope everybody has a great rest of your day, and thanks again.
Thanks, Mike.